friends, it's Christy. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be making a card using Lawn Fawn's Den Sweet Den, Let's Go Nuts, Mom Plus Me, and Happy Harvest. So I've stamped out all the images I'll be using on some Nina Solar White cardstock with Lawn Fawn Jet Black ink, and I'll be coloring with my Copic markers. I'm starting with my bears, and for those I'm using E43, E44, E47, and E49. So I recently did a card using these bears and I used some different combos, so I thought I would show you another option. So I'm starting with that E49 and laying in some shadows and also just defining the edges of that mama bear, creating some separation between the different body parts so that her face kind of just pulls forward from the rest of her body. It also is going to pull her haunches and her legs a little bit forward and just create a little bit more depth there. And then I'll grab that E47 and start to blend that out. And because that E49 is so dark, it's nearly black, I am making sure to work over the edge of that and just break up that pigment, pull it into the lighter areas, and create a nice blend. Then I'll take the E44, which is kind of a big step down from that E47. So again, I'm going to start to blend over the edge of that E47 and just pull it into the areas that I'm coloring next. I'm going to do the majority of the rest of the bear with that E44. I'm going to color in her legs almost completely and a good portion of her back, most of her face. And just save a little bit of area for that lightest shade, the E43. I also put a little bit of that E44 right around the muzzle to just help define that. And then any of the rest of those white spaces I will fill in with that E43. And I'm also going to color the two baby bears off screen with this combo. I'm just going to take off the E49 and use the lightest 3 shades since they're quite a bit smaller. And then for the muzzle, I'm going to use E53 and E51, just the 2 shades, but I will go back over with the E53 and add a bit more of that just for a little extra definition, and then pull it forward with that E51 on the muzzle. For my squirrel, I'm going to use E13, E15, E17, and E19 so I can make red squirrels, which are my favorite. And you can see I also colored the acorns in with the same shades as the bears. But for the rest of the squirrel, I'm using that E19 first, again to just define the edges and create some separation, create some depth there, and then start to blend out with that E17 and just kind of soften them up. Then I'm going to fill in most of the tail and then just have that E15 that's going to fill in most of the rest of the space. I believe I just left a little area on the face and the back and the top of the tail for that lightest shade, the E13. And then I'll do the second little squirrel off screen using the same shades. For the owl, I'm using E70, E71, E74, and E77. So I'm going to start with the E77 and add some shadow along the back side of her body, down her wing, and on the back where her tail is as well. And then I also put a little shadow on the left, just not quite so predominant, and also a little bit in the crease between her eyes. And then I'm blending that out with the E74. And again, just softening up the edge of that E77. Sometimes I'll even color in little circular motions to just help break up those lines so you don't get any just those harsh lines that can sometimes be left behind in the transition areas. And then I will use the E71 to finish up her body. And I did forget her wing on the left side, but I'll go back and get that. And then I'm going to use the E70 to color in the area around her eyes, and just kind of fill that in. I didn't have a lighter shade than the E70, so I just filled that in and then defined it a little bit with the E71, and then blended that out with the E70 again. And then for the baby owl, I'm going to just drop down a shade lighter. So I'm going to start with the E74 and then blend that out with the E71. And while I was at it, I decided to do Mama's wing, and then I'll fill in with the E70. And then for the baby's eye area, I just flicked in a little E70 and kind of let it fade into the white. For the crow, I'm using C5, C7, and C9, and that C9 is super dark. It really is almost black, but I wanted there to be a spot of darkness on this card since it is a fall card, and I'm also using a Lawn Fawn photo challenge as inspiration for this card. So you can see that the area around the eye got a little bit too dark. So I decided to pull in one more shade, that C3, and I'm going to go back over the eye area and just lighten that up a bit and then fill in the chest just so you can see it, because I hate to have the eyes get lost. It just makes the animals not look like they have any personality, so I think that really helped. I'm moving on to my pumpkin, and I'm using YR12, YR14, and YR18. So I use that YR18 to define the two sides, and then I'm going to pull that down from the top and bottom of the center portion as well. And then I'm going to start to blend that out with the YR14, and then I'll fill in the middle area with that YR12. And I did go over that with a couple extra flicks of color just to beef up that saturation a bit. Just did a whole double layer on that. And then the second little pumpkin I'm going to do off screen using the same shades. And I'll use G94 and G99 for the stems. Then I'll grab my black Sakura Jelly Roll pen and go over the eye of the baby bear, the crow, and the baby owl, since those are the critters that had their eyes open. And I will trim all of these images out with their matching dies. Then I took the Lift the Flap tree backdrop and die cut that out of some ground espresso cardstock, and pulled out all of the inner pieces and then just made sure that the little flaps were working. The one on the left was just caught by a little piece of cardstock that hadn't cut out perfectly, so I just grabbed my craft knife and went around the edge of that to help that to open. Then I'll take the grassy border and die cut that out of some Noble Fir cardstock. And then I'm also going to take some of the leaves from Acorn House and die cut those with a whole bunch of cardstock. So it's chili pepper, raspberry, fake tan, sticky note, cilantro, Noble Fir, mermaid, and then I have grapesicle from MFT is the light purple. And then I also took a piece of craft cardstock and just traced the openings for the Lift the Flap trees so that I could cut those out with a pair of scissors. This is just my Cutter Bee Teflon coated scissors that I have had since the day I started paper crafting over 10 years ago, and they still work amazing. I absolutely love these scissors. I can't recommend them highly enough. So I'm just going to trim on the outer edge of that circle opening, and then I will grab an eraser and erase those pencil marks so that you're no longer able to see those. And those are going to back the little flaps so that there's something behind it other than the background, which is going to be the sky in this particular card. So that'll just give me something that is making up the inside of the tree. So just to make it easy to attach those, I'm actually going to flip over my tree panel and tape those little craft pieces to the back using regular Scotch tape, just making sure that that's completely hidden behind the tree panel, and I'll do that for the other two as well. So beneath the flap on the right, I'm going to add the mama owl with her baby. And beneath the flap on the left, I'm going to add the sleeping squirrel and her pile of acorns. And because I put that tape going from the top to the bottom behind that craft piece, the sides are actually still open, so it makes it easy to slide those images into place. And then once I have them where I want them, I can just carefully lift them up and add a little bit of glue so that they are adhered permanently. Then I'm going to pop this piece into my MISTI so that I can stamp my sentiment. I'm using one from Love Poems and stamping that in walnut ink into the flap opening in the center. So I just used my magnet to hold that open while I stamp that down. And I'm going to stamp it down a few times to make sure that I get a nice dark impression. And then I will pop my card base in my MISTI as well. And I'm going to use a piece of mermaid cardstock for that. I'll stamp with peacock ink. And this time I'm using another one of the bears from Den Sweet Den and a squirrel from Let's Go Nuts. And then the sentiment says have a cozy day. That's from Den Sweet Den as well. So I'm stamping that down a few times again to get a nice bold impression, because this ink does dry back a bit. So I always like to stamp it a little extra dark because I know it's going to just soften up. So now I'm ready to start my assembly, and I'm going to take the grassy border that is using Noble Fur cardstock and adhere that down to the bottom of my card. And then I'm going to take my lift the flap tree background, and I will add glue all over the backs of the trees and then run a thin bead of glue all around the outside frame so I can adhere that down as well. So I'm just going to line that up with the outside edges of the card front to make sure it's on there nice and straight. So that green grass is going to show from behind the trees. And then I've also got a piece of cilantro cardstock that is actually left over from die cutting a stitch hillside border. So this doesn't have the stitching detail on it because it's the opposite piece, but it was the perfect length and most of that border is going to be covered up anyway, so I decided to use it. So I adhered that down in front. Now I'm ready to begin adhering my images, and I'm going to start with the mama bear since she is the largest one. So I'm just getting the placement of her right with the baby bear that's also sleeping because I wanted him to go to the right of her. So I just had to make sure that I had space for them to look right, and I actually ended up shifting her just a little bit as well because I didn't want them to be too close to the edge of the card just for spacing issues. I knew I wouldn't have anything too close on the other side either, so just wanted to have, you know, like equal space on both sides. So on the opposite end, I'm going to put the large pumpkin, and then I'll have the smaller pumpkin to the right of that. So that kind of balances out those two bears. And then in the middle, I'm going to have the other baby bear. So he's kind of looking up at what's going on up in the treetops since he woke up from his nap. And then I have the little crow that's going to be standing on the taller pumpkin. So I'll just tuck his feet behind the white outline of that die cut. And then the running squirrel I wanted to have up in the treetop, so that's what has distracted the baby bear from his nap. He's watching that squirrel's antics up there, so just adds a little bit more movement onto the card. So now I've got a whole bunch of leaves, and I did die cut all three sizes, so there's large, medium, and tiny leaves. but I ended up deciding to only use the medium and the small. I felt like the large ones were just too big for the scale of the critters. You know, they're almost as big as the baby bear that's sitting up, and so I just thought that that would look a little odd. So I'm going to start to place all of the medium leaves first and get those where I want them, and then I will begin to add in some small ones as well to just fill in some more space and just add little pops of color all around the card. So our new Lawn Fanatics challenge is Halloween/fall. So I tried to throw just a little bit of Halloween in there with the crow and the pumpkins, although pumpkins are definitely fall as well. I'm definitely more of a fall card lover than the Halloween, although I have been having some fun making Halloween cards this year. But I don't know, fall just feels cozy to me, and it seems like the perfect time to make cards with woodland critters, which I love all critters, but woodland critters are my favorite by far. And so it just, any chance I can get to use them, I'm going to be all over that. So yeah, I thought this one was going to be just really fun to incorporate all these different stamp sets and all the beautiful colors of the fall season, and also just those fun, beautiful colors of cardstock. And yeah, I'm really happy with how this one turned out. So as I'm placing these leaves, I'm just trying to tip them in different directions. I've got some pointing up and some pointing down to the sides. And I'm also trying to make sure that I don't put two leaves of the same exact color right next to each other, just to spread those little pops of color all around the card and, you know, give your eye something more to look at all the time. And then once I have these last few leaves placed, I decided that that was going to finish off the card. I didn't want to add any other embellishment because I felt like the colored leaves were really the embellishment, and there's a lot going on there. So I'll just lift those flaps so you can see all of the little critters and the sentiment inside, and give you another peek at the inside of the card as well. And that is going to complete my card for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. I was so excited to play with this die, and it was a blast. I can't wait to make another card with it. If you enjoyed it, please be sure to hit that like button and subscribe and ring that notification bell so you don't miss a thing. I post new videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. But if you'd like to keep watching right now, here are 2 extra videos that I thought you might also enjoy. There are also links to all of the products that I used today listed below the video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Have an amazing day. Bye-bye.